right, so yeah, welcome to the Meetup. I'll give the talk Insights from Using Ember.js in the Field, which I already had given on Emberfest last year in August, but I updated the slides a little, and I thought, yeah, maybe, okay. Yeah, let's do this very short. My name is Stefan. I live here in Munich. That's a regular expression, so you can follow me on Twitter in English or in German, yeah. I'm studying computer science at the TU Munich. I'm writing JavaScript, yeah, more widget-like since 2009, and in production rich web apps since 2011. We started off with Cappuccino because we're a Mac software company, an iOS software company, and the Objective-J language is very close to what we already used, and then we switched to Ember.js for obvious reasons. Yeah, as I said, I'm working at Boeing Software. We make cool apps for iOS, macOS with video and photo applications. And maybe you were told that building an application with Ember.js is easy, right? And I think that that's a lie. But yeah, we can manage because Ember.js is great because it makes the right choices, so you don't have to make them. And it's like, yeah, convention over configuration. So things like the router and everything, they give you a structure, and you can start off development. You can start off developing your app easily. So what am I talking about? I'll talk about building an application, deploying it, maintaining it, and updating the application. First of all, use Ember AppKit. It's a very important step. It has an extensive list of grunt tasks that compile your assets, that even set up a server for development. It has automatic rebuilding of your JavaScript files, minification if you like to. It has some basic test setup using Karma and QUnit. And it automates the tests via, I think, Phantom.js and all the browsers you want to have. And every time you save your code, yeah, the tests get rerun. It has an EA6 module transpiler that's very basic for modularizing your app. It gives you a very clear project structure, which is actually very important. If you see the screencasts with Tom Dale and everything is in one JS file, that's fine. But if your project gets a little larger, obviously you need modules. It can do API stubs for you, so you don't have to have a server from the first minute on. But actually, it's not as obvious and easy to understand because it has, yeah, like the huge list of grunt tasks. Some of them are more complicated and everything. So digging into it is not as easy as you would expect. A very new thing is Ember CLI from the same guy, Stefan from the core team. It's some kind of evolution of Ember AppKit. It has even more features, like, for example, scaffolding your project or new models or, yeah, new controllers. Its roadmap includes custom builds of Ember.js itself, so it detects what features of Ember you will use and strips out all the features not used, which reduces the quite big size of the Ember.js framework itself, which is very nice. And I think it should be ready for EmberConf later this year in 1 or 2 weeks or so. So maybe if you start a project today, use Ember AppKit, but in a few weeks, use Ember CLI. Questions to these points? Yeah, yes?
Which language is transpiler?
It uses, basically you have your ES6 modules, and it transpiles them to require.js. Yeah, but it's completely under the hood. You don't have to touch it in no time because everything works, yeah, more or less magically. You don't have to write require.js code or anything. It just works in this case, really. Yeah.
It's just modules, the transpiler?
I think they just transpile the modules, yes. At least currently.
Did you check on Ember CLI if there's already testing support? Because the last time I checked there wasn't any.
I think Stefan is working really hard on the weekends, and I'm not. I think they don't have testing support yet. But if he says he wants to have it ready for EmberConf, then the testing is definitely a thing he will have included.
And about the scaffolding, is it like for Ember data, I guess?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's like you want to create a new model called user, and it gives you a user controller and a user route and
Okay, so
these things. Yeah, the basic structure to get you started.
including the data, the Ember data module?
I'm not sure. Yeah, like check it out on GitHub. It's really hard work in progress, but I think in a few weeks it will be the go-to project in this case. Okay, so let's talk about SEO. You have different options to like enable Google to crawl your sites. You can render templates server side. I think Discuss uses this option. They really take their handlebars templates and just render them on the server and send it to the browser when the browser requests an URL. You can render the whole page, so your server acts as a client and using your application with, for example, Phantom.js. There's even a managed service for this. I forgot its name. Never mind. You can, of course, redirect the Googlebot, but maybe Google won't like this. There is this meta tag for Ajax-based sites. The whole Google document is from like 2005 or so. They're not really single-site, client-side apps, but more like Ajax content may appear here and there. Or, of course, you can do a minimalistic version of your content on server side. But, of course, that's not a real problem for all Ember.js apps. Only for the ones who replace a real website. If you have a login area, then, of course, SEO doesn't matter anyway.
And this is after the escape fragments from Google?
Yeah, exactly. So you can give Google like a URL, and then they call that URL, but that does not really solve the problem that you have to statically render content on your server. I think.
Yeah, well, it solves the basic problem.
Yeah.
You have to
Exactly.
If somebody has crash reported a big production site with that concept implemented.
Okay. So yeah, maybe the community should come up with a better solution to this problem, or a more generic solution, if you have to worry about crawlers and SEO at all. Also, and that's especially true for Ember.js before 1.0, but I think it's still important, adapt to the changes in the framework. And yeah, like, don't try to be too clever when, for example, writing code that looks up a controller or a dependent controller over your model or something. It may seem like a good idea if you're coding the stuff, but later to maintain it, it's quite a hell. And that goes to another point, like dependency injection. Of course, an important topic. And I think Ember.js really tries to convince you what is the right way to do dependency injection. So maybe it's not a good idea to inject root parameters into your model or something. There are like in your router, the controller 4, the setup controller hook. Use those methods. Don't use custom register unless you really know what you're doing. And yeah, that's what I said in the beginning. Ember.js really tries to give you a good conventional way of doing things. So stick with that, or work with the framework. All right. So for example, we have an application that lives on our web server in the /connect directory, because it's for connecting your users. And it's actually quite easy. For example, this is code from the application router. You can say that it should use the HTML5 history and has the root URL with /connect, for example. And Ember.js is basically ready to route your users through the app. and everything's inside /connect. And also server side, if you're using, for example, Apache, you have to, of course, ignore all the assets. So CSS, JavaScript files should not be redirected into your to your index HTML, but all the rest, the rest of the routes, simply all go to the index HTML, and then you can let Ember.js figure out where the user should go and which view to display and everything. So this is a very basic setup if you want to integrate your application into one directory of your web server. Then you're out of luck. No, actually, of course, you could use the default location, which is the hash, and it will still work, of course, but it won't look as nice as using history. So, of course, that's the location history part is only for having nice and clean URLs. So your application looks like it is a server-side application inside your whole website. Yeah, of course, if you have to support that browsers, then leave out that bit, and it will still work, but it won't look as nice, of course, yeah. So actually, you want to have automated deployment from Git, which is not as easy, especially when you have your like 1,000 other sites on your server. And so what we used to do a long time is that we uploaded the code manually, which obviously is bad because you forget about files and it's a big mess, so you really want automated deployment. And I think if your app is alone on your server and in your repository, then this should be a lot easier. And yeah, maybe use tools like continuous integration servers. We currently have a Jenkins setup that uses rsync to deploy our sites. And I think that it's not too easy to set up and to maintain, but it's still a largely better idea than uploading your code manually. And yeah, maybe if you use Angular. No, just kidding. So tracking errors. Depending on how much interaction your app gives to the users, there may occur errors, more or less. There is the Ember.onError function you can use. Then you can do a custom Ajax call or something, or we use Rollbar. They have a quite nice free plan. If your app works great and you don't have many log messages, then, for example, Rollbar is a nice way to go. And it gives you stack traces and everything. So yeah, basically track what happens in your application. That's quite an obvious point, but don't forget about it. Also, you may want to track your visitors. And there's a common thing people do, and I think this is still accurate with the current version of the router. Don't observe the current path, because you won't get notified if, for example, you go from the one article to another article, because that doesn't change the path, because for Ember the path is articles.article and not the actual content of the URL. Instead, there is a did transition event that fires after every transition that occurs in your application. And that's a nice place to, for example, fire off Google Analytics tracking or everything you want to do. You don't have to remember this code. I will have a link in the Meetup group posted later. Are there any questions to this point? Very good. Okay. So yeah, for testing, you want to do unit tests that basically verify that the code of one file works. And that's, of course, quite easy when you have modules. Maybe you can have dependencies, you can fake them. And everything is you can ensure that your login controller accepts the input value from your login field, for example. There's a very basic test cases in this area. You want to do integration tests that ensure that your modules in your application work together. And this can be a little harder depending on how complex your system is. If you are really, if your app is only doing interactions with your backend, and that's the only thing it's made for, this may be a little harder. Again, you can maybe use, for example, the API stubs that Ember AppKit provides, or you just override your networking code when you're in testing mode. something like that. And of course, there are acceptance tests, and you verify that the outcome is right, and which is, yeah, I mean, what is right anyway. So how do you want to build complex user interactions? Do you verify that the layout is fine and do like a screenshot-based testing? I saw an article about that once. Yeah, I think this is maybe the hardest part to test at all, because yeah, you need the right tools and you need the right test cases to begin with. So this is another area we yeah, maybe should talk about more. There's Ember testing, and I think it will get more attention from the core team over the next time. So it should get better and better, but still, yeah, testing client-side applications is not that easy as it is with server-side applications. Additionally, maybe you want to do A/B testing. So you roll out the application to like 1% of your visitors, and then you test if there are any major drawbacks, for example, in your revenue, or if there are errors with the updated code. And of course, this is something your server has to support to basically, first of all, to decide who will get a new version and who will get an old version of the application. And then again, how can you track the success or the failure of the new application? And yeah, I think on this topic, there's not enough content, user content yet. But there are, for example, services like Optimizely, I was told after Emberfest. And of course, they want quite some money for that, but they can get you started, I think, with providing methods for that. Yes, Michael. As far as I understood it, it's like you really have two completely separate versions of your app. And so when the user first visits your page, you deliver either one or the other version, the other complete version of your app. And I don't think that it's optimized for Ember.js, yes. You really have to do some work yourself to communicate back with your server. Yeah. So yeah, as I said, talk or write about it more, because if you do A/B testing, I think really many people would be interested in that topic. Yeah, so what's the takeaway of all this? I think as the Ember community is still quite small, we should first of all ask for help. So yeah, other people can see they're not alone, that the core team can see that there are issues with different parts of Ember.js. Of course, if you know something, help others, obviously. Also, the IRC is a really nice place if you want to get in touch with the core member team, for example, on query parameters, or I don't know. There's always someone on IRC you can ask. Yeah, maybe blog about it, what you build with Ember.js. I saw that Square, for example, the credit card provider, they have a nice blog and cover many topics. They're using Ember.js a long time. Yeah, basically don't be shy. Are there any questions? Okay then, thank you for your attention.